Hello, it's me again, Hope. Another INTJ on the internet, just doing my thing. My hair is just doing its thing, just defying the green screen. I just have this magical green psychic aura around me at all times. It's great. Today, what I am exploring in my quest for the test is something I just found. Of course, I'm just finding these tests left and right. This is the Michael Caloz? It could be Caloz, it could be Calo. Maybe the Z is silent. I don't know. I don't know this guy. Cognitive functions test. From what I understand, from what I've read, he's an ENTP, self proclaimed. He does say in his updates that he redesigned the site to give it a fresh look. I kind of like the elements. It's just like an individual watching the world and kind of seeing and analyzing that. It feels like a very NETI sort of situation, especially with Effie and the child position. So that's pretty cool. Your personality type shapes your reality. Now, I find it really interesting because if you delve deep into some of the MBTI uh, Jung cognitive function stack, and you get into the exploration of the shadow side of things. So, what is kind of imagined as the shadow side of the INTJ is the ENTP, and vice versa. The shadow of the ENTP is the INTJ, and because the other type possesses the ego cognitive functions stack that is opposite of our own ego, it kind of challenges the way that we take in information and process it and respond to the world. So if we're able to kind of like incorporate some of those challenges of our deficits into our personality, if we're able to kind of solve or compensate for the lack that we've created by moving in a particular direction, then I would call that probably growth. To be able to integrate what is called the shadow. I don't really know if I love that description. And I don't particularly subscribe to the notion of the unconscious. I mean, there's the subconscious. I think there's things that you suppress or repress or compartmentalize. And I think there's actual skills in life that you lack because you've decided to pursue other skills. I think there's trade offs. So, in that respect, as you develop through life, you're always going to have to find some way to compensate for the deficiencies you've created in yourself or that your environment has created within you. And I don't know if your personality type shapes your life. I think it's more like you as an individual are responsible for your reality and how you respond to reality. You can argue that there is an objective reality, but we don't really know it because we're all operating from our subjective senses when we take in information. So really the world is like this weird quasi space of like multiple subjective realities kind of influencing and interacting with each other, which is really crazy. It's crazy that we all exist on this planet. You know what I mean? Sonder. That sounds a little pretentious. I hate to call that out, but I get it. Usually when you're being pretentious, you really are coming from a good place of wanting to inspire other people, I think. If you're detail oriented, does it blow your mind that other people can submit a resume full of spelling mistakes? Yeah, I mean, I've seen the spelling mistakes in emails and stuff, and I'm like, you really didn't revise that before hitting send, huh? If you're a lover of beauty, how can other people ignore a gorgeous sunset? Yeah, I'm asking that all the time. Sunsets are awesome. Yeah, if you're focused on innovation, why are other people so stuck on tradition? I think the ENTPs really agree with that one. People's minds are structured differently. I think we can all agree on that. If I've harped on anything, I think it's been individual differences. So, Learning to speak the secret language. Is there a secret language? I don't know. I think there's various tools that you can use to understand your world and other people. Um, I don't know if it's, I think it's all how you navigate it. I don't think there's a secret. I don't think there's a silver bullet. Either way, you still have to work with people within reality and sometimes meet them where they're at or try to convince them to meet you where you're at. Imagine if you could quickly exchange a single code word when you met someone, the name of your archetype. With this one word, you'd immediately understand what energizes them, how they absorb new information, and how they make decisions. Think about how much that would transform your ability to communicate with your colleagues, friends, and romantic partners. I do agree, like, once you start getting into personality stuff, and it's not so much about learning personality as much as it is training yourself to recognize certain traits within other people. So it's kind of like training that NI, right? Like that pattern recognition and being like, okay, so based on how this person uh, behaves or how their behaviors manifest, like maybe we can logic out some of this motivation and we can truly listen to what this person is saying, but also how they are saying it, so that hopefully you can better understand their motivations and their needs and their wants, and that'll help you communicate better and get along with them better. And understanding, I think, leads to a lot of great things. But I'm an INTJ, so of course I would believe that. Okay, let's take the test because that's what we're here for. Oh gosh, there's an introduction. Maybe I should have skipped the introduction. Okay, so he's talking about Carl Jung and the different cognitive functions. I'm not getting into all of the instructional videos on what the different cognitive functions are. Not yet. Maybe it's something I will explore in the future, but right now I'm just like really interested in taking tests and stuff like that. Uh, why is this personality test different? Carefully written my questions. Thank you, Michael. To get the heart of what makes you tick. I think ENTPs are actually really good at that. Like, I think TI and FE together can really be, in the worst toxic situation, very damning. Like, an ENTP has the potential to rip you to shreds at your core, which is very terrifying. Like I talk about, like I said previously, that it's my shadow type. So the TI is really the critic of TE, and the TI being able to analyze little very precisely to just like jab at you, also using that FE. But FE, having the TI then the FE like right there in the middle of the ego function stack, it's like it's very playful. It can do a lot of teasing. I think ENTPs should be careful when they're immature about teasing too much towards someone's sensitivities, because you can really hurt people if you do that. Okay, so let's see. It's perfectly normal if you like partying one night but feel like staying home alone to read the next. It's true. Now, you might find this bizarre, but I have partied. Yeah, I've done that. I don't particularly love partying, but if you're amongst good friends, like I could enjoy a good party. I'll do anything once, really. One party and then that's it, never again. No. Yeah, so no one's 100% one thing or another thing. I feel like anyone in the personality space is going to tell you that. That's like a general, like, hey, you can't take this completely seriously because even if you have a certain archetype, obviously there's going to be individual experiences that shape you throughout your life. So there's going to be differences. You can't be 100% of what, a description is going to tell you you are. That's silly. Okay, this guy's promising a lot. He said he's promising it. He's promising it. Okay. All right. Okay. Look, if you want to go out and take this test, you can read all the stuff and it'll tell you the basics. It also gets into the cognitive functions. It gets into the attitudes of the functions. which is like your preference priority stack, which is fun. So each section will help you decide which of the cognitive function variants you're most comfortable with. Everyone uses all the cognitive functions. Now, interesting point of order. I'm not sure if I agree that everyone uses every version of the cognitive function. I sometimes I feel like what's happening is that if I'm an NI dominant, I don't think I'm really ever using NE because my NI is so strong that it precludes me from like really knowing and understanding what extroverted intuition is like because I have such the opposite version of it. So I feel like when I'm accessing an extroverted intuition behavior, like jumping around to various possibilities and like, connecting things associatively, I think I'm using multiple functions within my ego stack in a roundabout way, like together, to try to synthesize a version of extroverted intuition. And it's never fully, truly extroverted intuition. I don't know if I really believe I have access to that, even though I really love it whenever I experience it in other people. Okay, it's important to indicate how strongly you identify with each one. I think your attitude towards certain like functions or actions or how you use your various processes, like I think that's a very important determining factor in creating a reliable test. P.S. The two choices won't always be opposites. Thank goodness. To get the best results, be honest. Yeah, that's always the advice. Notice which answer you would feel most pulled towards. It applies to your whole life, right? So you kind of look at the whole stack of your life and how it's measured up. Ooh. Compare yourself to the average person. Yeah, I mean, I think we can be limited by logical fallacies and cognitive biases, such as like availability or recency. So how have you performed recently versus like the scope of your whole life, or like what memories do you have available to you, or what comparisons in other people you've interacted with do you have available to you? Okay, so the test should take 15 to 20 minutes. I've already rambled on going through this introduction, so review all the options on each slide before selecting one. Ooh, it's like slide based. That's nice. Which one sounds more like you? I kind of like this, like selecting one or the other. You love starting new projects. You're like an architect, building up your solution by exploring all possibilities to find the best approach. That immediately sounds like any, but it could also be NI as well, with like an attitude of like being optimistic about change and about new projects. Like projects are a very huge thing for me as an INTJ, and I do like new projects or iterating upon old projects. Sometimes I revisit things. The INTJ gets compared to an architect a lot. Um, I think I could see myself being an architect and designing things. I don't necessarily do that as my job. I'm an internal auditor, and so oftentimes I am architecting audits, like a new audit in a new area. So that's kind of interesting. You love completing projects. Oh man, you know what? I like completing projects too. It's pretty satisfying. It's better to be done than to find the 100% best solution. Yeah, so that is more of a TE thing than a TI thing. So TE is like, I'm going to be done for now. I'm going to put out the minimally viable product, the MVP, and that MVP is going to function within reality. It's going to give me feedback. It's going to tell me about things. And from there, if it's still worth my time, I can continue to build upon that product. But yeah, very, very like segmented, task-based, project-based TE. In a crisis, you're the commander pushing the team to finish. That is dominant TE. So I'm actually more on the NEs. This is probably NE, but from my position, it's also NI. So it's just intuition, I think. This is definitely TE. Oh, you can slide it. Oh, you okay, so you're like, which one do you like more? But also, what is your attitude towards that? So that's very fascinating. I do like this approach. You know what? Give it up to the ENTPs. I do admire them a lot. Um, because I don't always explore all possibilities. I explore the most probable possibilities and make my decisions from there. I'm gonna say somewhat. You're good at scheduling, quantifying, and contingency planning. Yeah, I feel like contingency planning is a really big one for the INTJ. Most of the INTJs I've met are very risk adverse, and it's because we often have like the future scoped into our current plans. And so we're thinking about a lot of factors that are yet unknown. And so that causes you to be more aware of risks. And so you're going to have multiple contingencies if something fails or if a new risk enters the picture. You file your ideas away in your mind to be developed later, and you like to figure out how things work. Is that TI? Is that kind of what it's trying to describe? Is that what TI does? I'm not sure. I have an INTP partner, and oftentimes he's described it, or maybe this is my imagining of how he's described it. So this is like in my own words, a paraphrasing. It's like he's got to take an idea from the world and he's got to bring it back to his little INTP cave, his little TI cave, and he's got to figure it out for himself. Like very individualistic thinker. It's really got to make sense to him, and he has to understand how it works in order to decide whether he's going to accept or reject an idea. So oftentimes my TE is trying to bounce ideas off of him, and that doesn't work for him. His immediate sort of facade is going to be the rejection of my ideas, but he has sometimes been overwhelmed by things I've like thrown at him, right, in my TE-ness. But and maybe he'll have a freak out, like he'll have a crash out in the moment because it's just too much for him. But then he'll like come back later and he'll be like, I'm sorry, I had a freak out. I really thought about what you said. And I think I understand what you were saying, and now it makes sense for me, that sort of thing. And then he'll sort of explain his thinking. So oftentimes I have to have a very thick skin for rejection because I know with an INTP, oftentimes I'm going to be just my ideas are going to be kind of like immediately rejected or debated against. But that's kind of like the TI process, I feel like. But yeah, I'm gonna go with A for sure, and I'm gonna say definitely. Yeah, I feel confident. You like identifying how things are different and logically classifying them. Yeah, I think I notice differences and anomalies and outliers. I like contrast, that sort of thing. So I think that's definitely true. You want to be in control. You don't like people trying to influence you. I don't. Or manage you. Yeah, that's a resistance to FE, I think. Too much, especially if you think it might interfere with your goal. Oh, yeah. I like both. Am I more I feel so strongly about not being in control, but this aspect. And it's like being the way it manifests for an INTJ especially, I feel like it's like that protectiveness around the FI, like my little gooey center. Um I'm very emotionally vulnerable, right? And I've recognized that vulnerability. And I'm like, I need my alone time to process my values the same way that an INTP needs their alone time, even though that's their dominant function. Maybe SI would be more comparable because that's in the tertiary position. I don't know. It's definitely FI and SI are very different, but having things in the tertiary position and wanting to protect them in some way, shape, or form, I think you should think about that with people and their attitudes about how they interact with like the self or their values or their logic systems. Yeah, I'm gonna go B somewhat because I'm actually very much valuing this much more than this, I feel like. And I guess I can look at the examples for like what the creator, what the ENTP is trying to get at. Thank you, Michael, for including examples. You're excited by the idea of taste testing coffees or wines, identifying which attributes certain. I mean, that sounds like a very sensory description. But I will say, whenever me and my ENFP friend had a podcast, we did some taste testing stuff, and it was really fun. It was a really fun thing to do. We did Red Bull, we did Taco Bell hot sauces, we did all of the sauces at Buffalo Wild Wings. It was really fun. Time is running short on a group project. Everyone else is still discussing different approaches. Jesus, are you kidding me? But you're the one to put your foot down and make the decision to ensure that you finish on time to achieve your goal. That has happened to me before, and I have hated it. I hate to be the person who has to take over a project because no one is doing any work and they don't have any accountability. But it has happened before, and it's frustrating for sure. You're passionate about knowledge for its own sake. Accuracy is important, and it doesn't matter where an idea came from if it's the best one. That's TI. The best ideas are efficient and immediately useful. Information should be objective, orderly, and rational. That is very TESE. This is right up my alley, so this is definitely true. You're excited following all the steps on a winding path leading to the conclusion. Meaning is more important than pure facts, and you want to understand what's going on behind the scenes. I feel like NI very much like meaning is more important. I feel like that's a very FI thing. You want to understand what's going on behind the scenes. That's like, I feel like it's a very NI thing to want to sort of dig in and see what's going on beneath or behind things. Like, what is the subtext? What is the motivation? So that I can understand the logic of your intent. And I can predict your patterns better, honestly. Okay, you just want something that works efficiently. That sounds very TE. You're more concerned with the final result than understanding all the steps and thought processes that led to it. I think understanding the processes is very important. It's not enough to have a black box solution. I think you need to be really responsible for how information flows through the system and how it's processed and where it's sourced. But that's also the auditor in me. You know, I can still like efficiency and still want to be very concerned with the process of something. And I think that's why we have a neutral option here. Of course, it's like which one sounds more like you, which I think this test is designed very intelligently, you know, and I think I'll probably, say that throughout this. The facts are fine. No need to draw broader conclusions. Yeah, I'm gonna disagree with that. Da 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 da. Oh, I would be so curious with. I'm like, what else did you look at whenever you were coming to this conclusion? Like, what yeah what is behind your choices in this, and like if I can better understand you as a person, maybe I can understand your conclusions and the product of your work, and how can we improve that and make that better. You filter a situation through your own internal values to see how it makes you feel. That's very FI. You have a very personal or gut based system of ethics that can be hard to explain to others. Very FI. Values are objective and shared. You look to social norms and expectations. Hell no. Like etiquette for morality. I wish I understood. I wish I could fully understand and conceptualize social constructs, social norms and expectations, but I often find myself on the outs with what is accepted um, popularly by society. So, I think for INTJ, it goes into the shadow self, and FE is in the trickster position, which is often called the double bind position. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I can't seem to understand it, and I can't get it right. When I try, people still accuse me of being selfish. So, even when I'm looking out for other people's interests, I'm still selfish, and I'm still rude, and I can't win. So yeah, I do. I have strong internal values, and I usually align with those whenever I'm making decisions. And, I value individuals and I value individual differences. So if you come to me and you say, these are my needs and these are my expectations, and I'm like, yes, my decision making, this project is going to impact you specifically. So I do have to take your needs into consideration. So you are going to be part of the decision making process. But yeah, it's definitely over here. Authenticity and sincerity are important to you. They are. And you distrust when others seem fake or insincere. Distrust is not the correct word. I will say I don't quite trust them yet. Like they have to prove something additionally to me. So I need more information. I don't immediately distrust them if they seem a little fake or they seem like they're putting on an air or some sort of public persona. I mostly seek to understand, okay, so this projection of a public persona, what is behind that? Is this persona a tool you're using to navigate through society? I can understand that a little bit more because I definitely understand, tool sets and sort of the function of that. Is it covering for some insecurities, which I can also understand? Or, is your is this identity like really fake in the sense that it's looking to be duplicitous and manipulative, in which case I don't like that. You hold your personal feelings close to your chest unless it feels safe to share them. Absolutely. You often feel responsible for other people's feelings and you adjust your behavior to make them feel comfortable. No. Well, yeah, I do adjust my behavior to try to make other people feel comfortable. I do that. I do. But I don't feel responsible for other people's feelings. Like I can't be responsible. It's their own individual thing. Not out of obligation, but a genuine desire to help them feel good. Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. If anything, I feel like FE has the obligation and genuine desire to help people feel comfortable within an objective space. But what's really crazy about FE is that it will sometimes recognize the sanctity of like a shared emotional state within an environment. And if you don't fit within that shared emotional state, it will completely like oust you and alienate you from that space. And you will become an enemy of that space. So it's a very like us versus them, or like a very like, this is the group and you don't align with the group, so you don't belong here. Like that sort of attitude that's very like cliquish, especially when it's immature and sort of like the high school setting and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, FE can be really great in creating a very hospitable environment. And you see that in the culture of the southern United States. You kind of see that built into the culture of Japan as well, which is kind of interesting. Let's see. Different, very, very different ways of conveying FE, but yeah. I think I'm definitely on the FI side of this. And definitely. You generally don't need or want external emotional support for your feelings. I don't. And outward displays of emotion or vulnerability from a group can make you uncomfortable. Um, Not really. Like I don't think displays of emotion make me uncomfortable, and I don't think vulnerability makes me uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable when there is an expectation for me to perform my emotions, because I'm not necessarily always very emotionally expressive. So if I have to like conform to someone else's expectation of how I should be feeling or displaying my emotions, that's a problem for me. You try to maintain group harmony by negotiating conflicting views and finding commonalities. That's also true. So I'm going to be neutral on this. You interpret situations more by how you feel about them than the objective facts that are visible to everyone else. I'm more of a fact-based person, but I'm also very intuitive. So how I feel about something, There might be something in the logic of a situation. Maybe there's some unknown facts, or maybe there's something else that I am like considering other than what is just currently known and available. Because there's a lot of information asymmetries that exist in a world. Like, you don't always have all of the information, and you shouldn't assume that you have all the information in a certain situation. You pay attention to the moral implications of actions, and you're more concerned with how things should be than how they are. No. Um, no, I don't. I'm very much a reality based person. So usually I'm like, this is how things are. I don't have like moral predispositions. I think I might be much more case by individual case sort of based in my thinking. So, go somewhat. You're in tune with other people's emotions and you actively try to fulfill their needs. Or you're in tune with how things make you feel and you're focused on self expression and sharing. Now, what I like is that this is more of like an FE thing, right? And this is more of an FI thing. Whereas in the past, like A was more FI and B was more FE. So now he's kind of switching it up just in case, you're like, I don't know why you would be targeting a specific cognitive function if you want a specific result. Maybe that seems a little bit strange. Like, why take the test in the first place if you've already determined like who you are and how you function? I mean, that's more true, but it's not very true. It's not necessarily difficult for me to verbalize my feelings, but it's difficult for me to like non-verbally express my feelings, I would say. Like, emoting is not really my strong suit. You vividly compare and contrast your current situation with what you've experienced in the past, or with what you consider to be normal. That's a very SI thing. Or it could be S in general. What you consider to be normal could be like a sensory sort of thing. You pay attention to what's going on around you in the physical world right now. Okay, that's very SE. So this is SI versus SE. You're more perceptive than most people with your five senses. I will say when I'm out on a hike, I am caught up in what's happening right now around me, but I also drift off into my own mind space. So, um, I do a bit of both. I definitely love stopping to feel the sun on my skin. I mean, that's true. You subjectively filter new information through your previous knowledge and experiences. Historical context is important, not only your own personal past, but also traditions, procedures, and laws. I mean, I agree that procedures and laws and precedents are important. Not so much with traditions, not don't really love traditions. You objectively see what's there in the world around you without applying judgment, personal bias, or seeing hidden meanings. You can often see multiple sides of an issue. See, that's a very NI sort of thing. So maybe that's SI versus NI, which is kind of interesting. You're observant and you follow concrete things happening around you: sights, smells, styles, trends, what people around you are doing, including their nonverbal cues that others often miss. So when I am actively focused on this sort of thing, I'm very observant. I don't always know how to interpret what I'm observing and turn that into useful information, but I am picking out details and stuff. And eventually, if I gain enough knowledge and details, eventually something will reveal itself to me, and I will make a connection, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, now I see, now I get it. I've been picking up on this for a while, but now it's become clear to me that this is what is happening. You like to remember and preserve the past, and you favor the tried and true. Your cherished things are routine and familiar. New things can take a while to grow on you. Yeah, that seems very SI as well. I definitely agree with that. You are in tune with your internal bodily sensations like pain, hunger, and thirst. Absolutely not. You love the physical world, whether it's admiring beauty or experiencing new sensations. You might be a thrill seeker, fashion guru, or first responder. Um, so for an INTJ, this is very SI versus SE, but for an INTJ and myself in particular, I admire SE so much. Like, I admire the beauty of the physical world. I don't always want to be a participant within that. I don't necessarily always want things from the physical world to encroach upon me. I'm not a thrill seeker. Like I said, I'm risk adverse. Um, Obviously not a fashion guru. I think you can train these skills, for sure, but it's gonna come much more naturally to maybe someone like an ISFP, or an ESFP for sure. First responder. Now my brother, who is an ESTP, he's very much SETI, and he is that sort of way where I think he is a bit more of a thrill seeker. And it's interesting to observe him. You tend to live in the moment. You might be impulsive sometimes, and you might need a push from the outside world to take action on something you've been meaning to do but putting off. You'd rather focus on immediate needs rather than rules or obligations. That seems like a NE dominant sort of thing. You take in new information or I guess it could be NE or SE, honestly. You take in new information and carefully compare it to your own past behaviors and experiences while minding your routines. There's a precision to your life, and you notice inconsistencies and details, rules, and precedents exist for a reason. Yeah, this is where I'm neutral, I think. I'm not very backward looking. I think precedents do exist for a reason, but oftentimes those reasons are highly specific to a specific context. And maybe they need to be challenged and re examined. Maybe you need to set new precedents. You're indecisive. You love brainstorming and you juggle a lot of thoughts in your mind at once. That sounds like any dominant. I could be SE to a certain extent too if you're caught between a lot of sensory experiences that you want to do. You focus on a few good ideas and exclude other ones to avoid distraction. That's a very NI thing. So definitely over on this side for sure. You're focused on your goals or dreams and look inward for ideas that make the future happen. Interesting. You take in new facts from the outside world and connect the dots in imaginative or innovative ways to create new ideas and learning opportunities. Uh, Both of these are interested in the future and enjoy learning, but you tend to revisit the same ideas over and over, sharpening them and considering them from different perspectives. Okay, so he's trying to say NI. Both of these are interested in the future, but for you, the future is a lot more unpredictable. Your interests are always changing and you love learning new things. So who knows how long you'll keep your current hobby before finding a new one that appeals to you more. Very NE. And I think this like highlights a big difference between like the NI DOMs versus the NE DOMs, because I will jump to different hobbies or like new interests and stuff, but it's going to be for like a focused amount of time. So I'm going to explore this thing for like a focused amount of time. I'm going to go in depth with something, and I'm going to kind of mostly stick with it until I feel satisfied that I've gotten enough of what I wanted from the situation before I immediately go and jump into a new thing. So, like with taking these tests online, it's a very NI thing because each individual test I take is its own new SE experience, right? It's something new to interact with. And new ideas that are kind of feeding into the NI for analysis. But if you look at the activity as a whole, conceptually, I am exploring this idea of like what makes a good personality test. What are the design elements that seem to make something more balanced or useful or functional as a tool for self exploration? And the longer you stick with something, the more insights you're able to derive as you approach it from new and different angles. It feels more like your brain is doing processing unconsciously. And you tend to suddenly reach aha moments. Oh, I'm going to have a big talk about this. Your world is an explosion of ideas, consciously deconstructing things into their component parts, seeing symbolism and drawing connections that others miss. I would argue, besides the explosion of ideas, everything else is very NI as well. All of this is very intuitive in general, and I think it's shared between NE and NI. I do agree with that. Um, this first part is very NI because we are passively processing a lot of things and we're withholding our judgment and we're withholding our conclusions. We're not immediately jumping towards conclusions. I fundamentally, just fundamentally, as an NI dominant, disagree. I think this is a misunderstanding of what NI in the first function is doing. You tend to suddenly reach aha moments that make you want to take action. This in particular, aha! No, it's not like that, bro. It's more like, ah, I see. I see. I should have seen this sooner, maybe. It's like, okay, so this is clicking into place. Okay, I get it. I get it, universe. I understand what you're trying to tell me. It's more of like, oh, oh, duh, that's what's happening. That's what NI feels like. NI is like, oh, I finally put it together. Um, which is it's such an interesting thing, right? Because you would think that it would be more like attacky and more like I'm grabbing this idea. I've been suddenly inspired, but it's really not like that at all. And in fact, a lot of these moments where you're like, "Oh, I see. I see." A lot of these moments you will often let go of because you're like, "Surely someone else has thought of that. Surely someone else has already expressed this in their own way and form." I'm like, oh, can I just Google this and see that someone has a whole book on this already on the internet? I mean, so a lot of NI is like, okay, this has become apparent. It just is reality now for me. It has just like pushed forward into my conscious mind, and it is not something fantastical. It's like very commonplace. It just is. That make you want to take action. Um, there can be certain turning points where you're like, I now have enough information in order to take action, but you don't see it as an INTJ. You don't see it as suddenly now I want to take action. It's not a sudden thing at all. It's like it's more like we've examined the possibilities. We've examined the most probable of those possibilities. We've garnered enough information that our idea within practical reality is going to be feasible to achieve. So now it's time to start allocating and placing our resources where we need to in order to accomplish the goal or task at hand. So for an INTJ, it's like very pragmatic, and it's not this like, like I feel like that's very much more NE inspiration. Like suddenly I'm like, aha, that feels more NE to me, and maybe being an ENTP and trying to understand what NI dominance is like, maybe that's how they're conceptualizing it. But I don't agree with like the connotation of that expression. You dive deeper into fewer subjects and combine pieces of information to build towards a single cohesive idea. Yeah, that's very NI. You have a variety of hobbies and you like bouncing from subject to subject. But I also kind of like doing that as well. You focus on exploring possibilities. It's I like to do it. It's not a main focus of mine. This is much more like my comfort area. So compared to NE dominance especially, and compared to maybe other people as well, um, definitely fewer subjects, I would say. You like making a choice so you can get to work. You see situations from many perspectives and pay attention to how your internal world is impacted. That's true. Open minded and bored by routine. You hate situations that lack exciting mental inspiration. I also agree with this. I feel like I really understand a lot of the NE perspective. I'm just not as driven by it, you know. I can focus for long periods of time. Um, I can actually sit in states of indecision while I'm contemplating various things more passively. I don't immediately have to make a choice to take action, but in order to take action in reality, I do need to make a choice. For each of the following questions, please choose one answer. It's changed a little bit. How do you direct your energy outward into the world? Towards other people in unity, towards results and accomplishment, very TE. What do you focus on within yourself? What feels authentic, aligned to your individual values? What seems most logical and rational to you? You start throwing words out like logic, like rational. It reminds me of NITE, but I know you're talking about TI. I might look at pros and cons too, but what's more important is trusting my instincts, emotions, what I feel in my body, what's right, what's ethically in line with the person I am and want to be. Like that's very FI. What is most true and accurate here? What's unclear? Are there any biases? See, considering biases is a huge NI thing because we're interested in scoping things from different perspectives and we want to rule out things like logical fallacies and biases and which decision-making criteria are most important to me? Yeah, I have to go with this. I mean, I'm sorry, my TE side wins out over my FI every time. What do you love to explore the most? Abstract ideas, patterns, and how things are connected. Physical sensations. Yeah, that's that. What do you tend to pay attention to behind the scenes, whether we're talking about the economy, office politics, or person's emotions? What does all of it really mean? Are there hidden insights? Or are you looking at best practices, what's been proven to work before, trusted experts recommend, expert according to your definition, not necessarily famous mainstream experts, what's safe, comfortable, and repeatable? See, I can't get behind this. TE does appeal to authority. And oftentimes, when you're TE appealing to authority, you're looking at merit and who has the best representation or experience of what that item is. So it's very merit based. So proven to work is pretty important to TE as well. But just because something is proven to work doesn't mean it's going to work in every single context or in this new situation that you're approaching. So often, an idea or a system is a very living, functional thing that you have to constantly evolve. At least from my perspective. Let's find your type family. These are 4 families, each containing 4 types with several key shared characteristics. Heck no, not a traditionalist. I can just rule that out. Experiencer, probably not. Idealist, that's FI. Conceptualizer, I'll probably be me. Yeah. I do love exploring values in people and individualized feelings, not FE objective feelings. I like authentic relationships. I've never been accused of being empathetic, unfortunately. And I haven't really been accused of helping humanity either, which is too bad. Yeah, live in the moment. I do value personal autonomy, spontaneity, and adaptability. I've not really been accused of spontaneity in the past. Productive but relaxed. Sometimes. Improvise, work well under pressure. These are all really interesting things that I can admire in other people. You know, like something I would relate to in traditionalists is like reliability, right? To deliver something on time. But this sense of duty and tradition is something I don't. necessarily possess. So it's interesting. Objective, logical, skeptical, seek knowledge, analyze data, more concerned with big picture. Yeah. I mean, that's all very. I'm not very competitive, but I am autonomous. I like to innovate. Little regard for past approaches sometimes. Weaknesses. What's your biggest weakness? Think of yourself at your worst, or when you're feeling stressed, what do you struggle with? Since this might be difficult, you can select up to 3 that seem accurate. What? If none of them or all of them seem right, you can leave them blank and move on. Okay. Sure. Hypersensitive and distrustful of feelings. See others as weak and inferior. I don't think that's true. Distrust feelings and look down on emotional people. Hypersensitive to criticism. If I was this way in the past, I've definitely gotten over it. Unconfident and vicious. Sweeping critical, vicious judgments. Distrust others or conform to feel like part of a group. You obsess over perfection and see things in black and white. That's like least of all. That's very much unlike me. Depressed and unmotivated. You withdraw and feel depressed, losing energy and motivation. You feel nostalgic, emotional, and like no one understands you. You decide that things need to be cleaned or reorganized, or you become a hypochondriac. I've seen that a lot in maybe SI in the third position. Um, so INFPs, but I think SI in the third position. It's very self-soothing by becoming nostalgic, and I think an FISI loop, you could probably become depressed and lack motivation and might get more emotional. And then oftentimes there's a fixation or sort of like an OCD component that might come out because of that. Paranoid and mystical. You feel flustered and afraid of ruining relationships or losing loved ones. You're confused and paranoid, misinterpreting other words as disapproving of you. You start to see deep prophetic significance in everything. That's interesting. That might be an ENFP sort of thing. I've seen that almost kind of take effect in the way of like reading signs and signals in the universe that might not necessarily be there because it's like through sort of a distorted lens. And being like really maybe kind of insecure in the relationships you have and thinking that people are hiding things from you or they view you in a negative light when they don't really. So that's kind of interesting. Sensitive and lonely. Feel hypersensitive, unlovable, and separated from everyone. You're far more emotional than usual, either crying or yelling. Ooh, obsess over proving minor logical points. This seems like an ENTJ to me because FI is in the last position. Um, and SE is in the child position. So SE is going to be very physically expressive whenever it's throwing a tantrum. But whenever your FI is like pushed too far and kind of aggravated, like your own personal identity and feelings and values, yeah, you might like dive deeper into proving your logical points because you're not properly dealing with your emotions and feelings. Interesting. Self-critical and judgmental. You make harsh, nitpicky judgments of others. You feel the need to take action and correct what you perceive as wrongs. You feel incompetent, but you try to bring order to the out of control world. I'm not sure about that one. A little iffy. Obsessed and self indulgent. You worry that everyone is noticing something negative about you. You feel haughty, critical of others, and like the world is against you. You feel self indulgent, seeking pleasure or danger. You beat yourself up about it later. This seems like an ESFP sort of thing. Like if you're going on a bender, maybe an ESTP. But I think it's possible for people who have SE lower to I don't know. I can't see myself ever going on a self-indulgent bender, but I have been in a situation where I was like, I need to just party and let loose. And so I let a lot of things go. I ignored a lot of red flags in the situation and it ended very poorly. So I can definitely see that happening to an INTJ, because they have so much pressure to let go, as people say. Reckless and fearful. You feel anxious and less tolerant of the unfamiliar. You're uncharacteristically. Oh, this is more of what I was talking about with like an INTJ struggling to let go and be indulgent in the SE. I can't help but imagine all the ways catastrophe could be right around the corner. I mean, maybe, but that's not. For me, that's not quite right, I don't think. I think uncharacteristically spontaneous and reckless can happen to an INTJ for sure. Definitely feeling anxious and less tolerant of the unfamiliar. So it said I could do up to 3. I can be sensitive to criticism sometimes. So I'm thinking at my very worst. I think this is what your typical INTJ answer would be because it does come up. And I mean, definitely in youth and immaturity. Really hate to admit to that though. Cuz I genuinely don't see other people as weak and inferior. But I mean, I can get behind distrusting feelings. Again, elements of this could apply to me because it kind of hits in the FI, but it's not quite right. Definitely feels more like an INFP. I would be afraid of ruining relationships or losing loved ones. Huh. Actually, I could see this for an INTJ, as well as an ENFP. Like, I can see it for both of our types, but in different ways. I wouldn't use these words. Like, I do sometimes get confused about how people are viewing me because they won't tell me. They won't give me actual verbal feedback. So I'm like, I actually don't know where I stand in this relationship because you're not telling me. Um I wouldn't say paranoid. I would just say more confused than anything else. Um and I think misinterpreting, to a certain extent, it's like not quite correct. But none of these descriptions are going to be fully correct. I'm trying to think like if I were to phrase my weaknesses in my own words, I would say I can be deeply isolationist. Um, that I don't always get help when I need help. Uh, that I don't always take care of myself, even though I know the ways in which I should take care of myself. So these seem fine. Just to round out your results with a little more data, here's a short, more traditional personality test where you pick broader dimensions instead of more specific cognitive functions. You know, one thing I really love about this, and I think NE does a really good job of this in the real world, and NI really picks up on this and loves it, is the variety, right? Like, because I'm very interested in getting different perspectives. I think you're trying to triangulate something. So the fact that, the NE is like, okay guys, we can't just rely upon one metric. We need a lot of different tools and strategies in order to get to the truth, like the technical truth of what this is. So I really appreciate that aspect of it. For each of the following 4 questions, select one answer. Imagine that you just got home from a long day at work and you're feeling low on energy. What's usually the best way to get you re-energized? Yeah. Get some alone time. Which way of making decisions comes most naturally to you? You probably use both these methods, but which one do you go to first and feel is most important for your personality? Okay, so making decisions. Lay out the pros and cons, work out what's most logical, check out how your gut feels. Choose what best aligns with your personal values. But it doesn't mean that you're illogical or overly emotional. Thank you for saying that. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. If you go on a gut feeling, sometimes you have reasoning and rationality behind it. You have just years and years of experience and empirical data. Um, I'm not likely to list out the pros and cons because I'm more of like, is this best for me sort of situation, you know? Is this best for the situation? Is this best for me? Do I feel aligned with this decision? Um, I almost feel like if you're laying out pros and cons, you might be you might be a bit more indecisive. So if I'm out of my element and I am like really there's some ambivalence within me, I might do the pros and cons thing. But that's not going to be my go-to. Imagine you're walking around outside, which I do often. Where does your attention tend to be focused? On the future or abstract, you're focused inside your head on ideas or possibilities, however impractical. On the present or past, you're focused on what's real, practical, actually happening in reality. I actually go on walks and stuff to ground myself in reality, and I have like this weighted vest that also kind of helps that. So, like jogging, walking, playing tennis, but oftentimes, the NI is still always active, like the NIFI. So the internal world is still like very much processing. And I might have other SE sort of distractions like a podcast or music playing in my ears. But regardless of all of that sensory that's grounding me, I'm still just very much like in my head and my thoughts and stuff. It's kind of aggravating sometimes. Compared to other people you know, which sounds more like you? You're a decisive decision maker who sets specific goals and follows a plan. You're an indecisive overanalyzer who leaves options open to adapt along the way. Yeah, definitely a TE will get you. Get you there. Okay, let's get you what you came for. You're most likely one of these three types, either an INTJ, ENTJ, or INFJ. So my best fit type is INTJ. I think that's great. I agree. But those fit scores are just a starting point. You are the only one who truly knows how your mind works. That's so true. Presented them as an approximate fit bar. I like that as well. Your approach is great. Thank you. You even gave me like little percentages. Thanks. I love that. Okay, the scores are not a percentile. Okay, that's fine. The highest possible score is 130. But it changes whether questions are removed. And you know what? I like how he's adapting his test based on more data he gains. That, yeah, that shows, I think, more validity. I encourage you to see the scores simply as a way of comparing how strongly you match to one type versus another. I think that's great. If all of your type results, even the top ones, are only mid range, it could mean many things. You're either overly cautious in answering, so if you were answering more neutrally, if you're overthinking or misinterpreting the question, right? If you don't want to be seen as stereotypical. So if you interpret different words or concepts differently, I explained various places where I interpreted concepts differently. You've had to suppress certain traits due to your culture or family. That's very true. Like your role dynamics within your family or within your culture really changes your expression or how you view or conceptualize some of these cognitive functions. You've experienced trauma. Trauma is another big one. You're still developing your self-awareness. That's true. There might be a language or cultural barrier. Yeah, if you're not like a fluent English speaker, you might have trouble with this test. Okay, he looks like a sweetie pie. I might watch some of his videos. That's fun. Oh, detailed results. Okay. My greatest weakness is apparently I'm overly ambitious. I'm a very chill INTJ, so I feel like that doesn't really affect me. Too high standards, yes. Critical and judgmental of self, yes, not of others. Type family, the NT conceptualizers. Primary is Nitefise. Love that. I don't agree with this. Elon Musk strikes me more, and maybe I need to see more like interviews with Elon Musk, but doesn't he seem like more like an INTP type to you? To you all? I don't know. He doesn't strike me as an INTJ. Maybe he's like a really immature INTJ. I don't know. Jodie Foster, I love if that's true. I love Jodie Foster. I'd watch anything that she's in. Tywin Lannister, that's funny. Fictional character. Um, Ayn Rand, I can see it. I feel like I don't agree with most of her views, which is interesting. But again, like someone like Walter White strikes me as more of like an extroverted dominant, like an ENTJ maybe. You struggle between following TE and FI. Internal conflict wise, I actually think TE and FI are fairly balanced. What is my biggest internal conflict? It's definitely my internal conflict is definitely centered around FI, but I feel like my conflict is more centered around FISE. So the expression of my emotions and physicality and sensitivity to the physical. But I can also have a lot of internal conflict with the NI as well, which, your dominant function, you're always going to struggle with it because there's an inherent recklessness of something that exists so pervasively for you. So NI always being turned on and active can sometimes in some cases be prohibitive to how you function and experience the world. Like an over reliance on your dominant function can lead to a critical failure, which has happened to me before. Um, or moments of self sabotage where you feel maybe a little bit too chained or hemmed in by your dominant function that you're like, I want to do the opposite. I want to be opposite of who I am. I want to kind of escape who I am for a moment. And that can lead to problems. I would say that can lead to conflicts in the external world, which has happened to me as well. So, overcoming weaknesses, reinforce your weakness of SE by practicing your TE. Do I agree with that? Um, no. No, I don't. I don't think TE is the way that I reinforce my SE. I honestly, I think it's more of like finding activities that are a challenge, but are activities in a safe space, but they're very challenging to me. So, a very challenging and engaging sort of like problem or task will integrate all of your functions together, and they will be working as one or in concert with each other. So, I don't think you should bootstrap your last function by utilizing your other extroverted function. I think you should find an activity that incorporates your entire ego stack so that they're all kind of bolstering each other and strengthening each other, and like it's the tide that rises all the ships, including the SE ship, if that makes sense. This is me. Scientist, architect, mastermind? What about auditor? What if we replace those words with auditor? Are you an auditor? The architect of possibility, seeing patterns in the noise. I agree with that. Ready to optimize your blueprint to achieve your potential? This feels a little gimmicky, Michael. Are you trying to sell me something? Yeah, I think you are. You're trying to sell your coaching. That makes sense. Independent, open minded, excellent at focusing down to what's actually important. Thank you, thank you. Probably not overbearing. highly judgmental of yourself and others, maybe. Need to understand why behind the decisions, yes. Each personality type has 4 cognitive functions in a certain order, and for each type, the fourth or inferior one is often regarded as that type's weakness. For INTJs, that function is extroverted sensing, which is oriented around physical sensory experience. However, many INTJs love physical activities like rock climbing, cycling, or hiking, so what's going on? Let me answer this before reading the screen, which I mean, you can read while I'm talking about this. Um, it's part of who we are. I mean, ultimately, in order to feed the NI, you have to have lived experiences. And there's a recognized value in lived experiences. And not only that, like a deep appreciation for aesthetics and artistic expression and performance. I just like it. My FI likes those things. I want to be good. Like, oh my gosh. I wish I were like athletic, but I think I would have to be more of a risk taker. I would be I would have to be someone who is chasing experience more. Yeah, and I'd have to be really willing to get knocked down continuously. As it were, I just haven't developed in that way. And the strengths and things I have developed throughout my life and what I am very good at, I do really value as well. So I don't know if I could craft myself from the beginning as a human being, would I be what I am? Not necessarily now, but would I be an INTJ that has this sort of growth trajectory? In a lot of ways, if there's any type of person who's really fit for self-awareness and growth and learning and evolution, it is the INTJ. So I really appreciate that aspect. But man, sometimes it would just be more helpful to be able to function in society. Sometimes I think I would give it all up to be more FE, SE oriented. But then I'm like, nah, too much of an individual. I don't know. What does Michael say? INTJs might be A, pushing their bodies to extremes or engaging in risky behavior. B, using physicality to balance their overly active minds. Yes, I do that. C, engaging in physical activities that are oriented around high standards and goal achievement. That's true too. Focused on making progress, forget to appreciate the moment. I think I've gotten past that and I'm able to appreciate small moments and stuff. And yeah, take time to celebrate wins. If you're risk adverse and an INTJ, you might be much more the type of person who feels loss deeply. Like you really feel your losses and your hits, but you don't necessarily feel your successes because that is the pressure that is on you to succeed. So you don't always you might be very prideful about what you accomplished, but you don't necessarily take the time to look out into the world and say, I should really value this. I accomplished this. And even small things that, I mean, sometimes even when I'm just like able to open a bag of chips on the first try, I'm like, yes, I'm working on my dexterity. Yeah, just struggling to open containers. Just struggling with the physical. I'm like, I should be much more better equipped to be able to do this, but I am not. I am terrible. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap things up here. Go ahead and try this test. This is one I would definitely recommend. It's well balanced. I think if you're mistyping as various things, then this can give you maybe some reasons why you would be mistyping as well. So as always, I hope you have a wonderful day wherever that finds you. even if it finds you in a very realistic and humble place.